What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Saturday edition of BYP with Q. Rich Quinones is here. We're brought to you by our very good friends over at Play It Again Sports in Deptford. Don't forget the new store in Livingston, New Jersey as well. Check them out online, playitagainsports.com. Location in Hertford Road, 1450 Hertford Road, Woodbury. We call it Woodbury, Deptford area, if you will. But nonetheless, our good friend Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 1029, The Game, brought to South, kind enough to join us. Follow him on X at Lloyd Vance. And Lloyd, first and foremost, great to get you back on. Always enjoyed. And the news comes down about 10, 15 minutes ago. It looks like cold weather, snow be damned. The NFL has moved. They've announced that the Bills and the Steelers game is postponed until Monday at 4:30. That comes down from the New York governor herself. And, the line hasn't moved too much, like a half a point here and there. But be that as it may, I don't know, where are we at right now with the NFL and these games? I mean, they're supposed to be played in, frigid, bad, snowy, yucky conditions.
Yeah, Q, it's funny. I know the old school guys, the guys probably from the San Diego Chargers and the Cincinnati Bengals have played in the Ice Bowl and back in the day, the Green Bay Packers
Yep.
and Dallas Cowboys, they had to play in the elements, but I'm kind of familiar with the same type of situation. Philadelphia Eagles, I remember a couple of years ago, the state came in and they just said it was going to be too dangerous for the fans in terms of them getting to the stadium. So they make it a public safety issue. But, back in the day, though, guys would dig themselves out. Players would help each other. They get to the stadium, and then the
Yep.
fans would show up as well. So, it's a new NFL, and Buffalo is soon probably going to have a dome stadium. You know what I mean? So that's what we're moving to. Cue these sterile environments where uh, it's a dome and the conditions really aren't out there because a lot of people they say they want to see the scoring. We know it's all about that, but it still should be a good game, and I'm sure we'll preview it in a few minutes, breaking down the X's and O's. But I guess public safety thing, and it's going to be interesting to see that Kansas City game. It's going to be played
Hmm.
tonight in some serious elements out there.
Yeah, and a lot of people think Miami doesn't have a chance in hell with those conditions, and that's what happens when you don't win a division, right? I mean, think about it. Miami would have been hosting uh, that game if they would have beat Buffalo to close out the season. Instead, Bills get the win and they get the AFC East. All right, let's get into some of the news before we get into these games. So, obviously, earlier in the week, Patriots and Bill Belichick parting ways. Um, Mike Grable dismissed Tennessee, not a surprise to me. And then you had Pete Carroll, which I think was a surprise to many, no longer with Seattle, whether you call it a stepping down slash firing, whatever the semantics are. You had, two really good coaches, and then you have a Hall of Fame legendary coach, and you make a case that Pete Carroll's probably going to go to Hall of Fame as well, but in Belichick. So first and foremost, Belichick steps down. We can wax poetic about his career another day, but they did not waste any time inserting Gerard Mayo to take over Belichick. And, there's that old saying, you never want to be the guy to replace the guy. You want to be the guy who replaces the guy who replaced the guy. So shocking, surprised, or did you have a sense that the Pats were going to go in this direction?
Well, Q, I talked to some guys up there, and they said that Gerard Mayo it had been not a well-kept secret that he was going to be the guy to replace Bill Belichick. He kind of wrote it into his contract last year. Started getting a lot of attention around the league in terms of interviews. They kind of blocked him, brought him back. Never gave him really the DC title, but he ran that whole defense, and he was the number one guy. And the key thing here, Q, is he is very close to Robert Kraft. So Robert Kraft believes in him. He was a guy that was an all-pro player for them, helped them win probably 3, 4 Super Bowls, and he's going to slide into there now. In terms of the Rooney Rule, if you have that guy there in house and everything, you can move him right in, and that's what the Patriots did. They had a plan, they executed. Now the thing is, we always knew that Bill Belichick was the de facto general manager as well. I think they're going to have to bring somebody in terms of that to help him out, whether it's Ziegler, who used to be with the Patriots and was with the Raiders and let go. Scott Pioli still around. There's a number of guys, but somebody's going to have to come in to help run the personnel side of the house there.
Mike Vrabel out. Tennessee. I mean, I still think they need a quarterback. They need to make wholesale changes. Derrick Henry, we believe it's his last. It was his last season, last game, regular season, in that uniform. I'm not going to sit here and say Vrabel's a great coach, but coach of the year, a couple playoff appearances here and there. I think he's a very good coordinator. I'm not shocked, but I thought going into the season he was one of the coaches that we labeled as on the hot seat.
That's an interesting one, Q, because we know the AFC South is kind of downtrodden, and he always had that team uh, very competitive, and they played very hard the last week of the season, knocking the Jaguars out of the playoffs. And but this situation where they brought Rand Carthon in as the new general manager, and Vrabel had kind of been aligned to the old GM, John Robinson, who they got rid of last year. So, I think Rand Carthon got in the ear of Amy Adams Strunk, who owns that team, and they decided, let's go in another direction. Vrabel, he can be he's a Belichick lieutenant, so he's kind of prickly at times. I think maybe he wanted a little bit more control, and they said, okay, we're going to part ways here. But I think Vrabel was going to get another opportunity. And Tennessee is going to be interesting to see where they go, Q. Yes, obviously that division, you can move up pretty quickly. We saw the Texans do it this year. But they're talking about Will Levis is going to be their starting quarterback. I just don't know about building around him. Lots to do this offseason. And you talked about the Derrick Henry contract. I think it ends this season and he'll be someplace new next year.
How about Pete Carroll? I mean, it just you almost start to think, okay, what direction are you going? I mean, he might be 71, 72, but he's very young, energetic. You can stick him in the booth, you can stick him on the sidelines. I'm hearing some connection to him going back to college. Some reports maybe Washington football. Again, I, I was never the biggest Pete Carroll fan, but the guy won. He won a Super Bowl, and he made the right choice in them jettisoning Russell Wilson. I mean, they absolutely fleeced Denver. So it's not like he left a covered bear with the organization.
Yeah, he did a great job there, and he always had that partnership with Paul Allen, who was their owner. He kind of passed away. Jody Allen, his sister, is taking over the team, and John Snyder's the long general manager there. So, this one was kind of surprising me, Q. I think they just wanted to go in a new direction. The team actually they had 9-8 last year, 9-8 this year. Last year was good enough to get into the playoffs. They had that resurgence, as we know, with Geno Smith. It just had run its course, and Carroll, 72, I think he'd been there about 14 years or so. He'd been to two Super Bowls for them, and it just was kind of like, okay, it's time. And it was interesting. I think they were kind of nice to him too. They paid him to kind of go away. So
Yeah.
they're still going to pay him as an advisor. But we'll see if it's Dan Quinn, who everybody says the leader in the clubhouse. He's now the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator, if he gets that job. But Carroll, I think will go someplace else. And you're right. He's a young 72 and he wants to keep going.
I thought we could had maybe 8 to 10 head coaching vacancies: Chargers, the Titans, the Raiders, Seattle, Atlanta, Washington, Carolina. Then you got what's going on with the Raiders and Antonio Pierce. There's some thought right now that the Raiders are going to keep him. I think Crosby went on the record and said, "Hey, man, if you don't bring him back, look to trade me." This whole the players like him, the players like him, that's all well and good, but that doesn't necessarily win games. I think they should give him a shot. I actually thought if maybe they don't retain him, the Giants should look to bring him in as defensive coordinator. But do you believe when it's all said and done, Antonio Pierce, they'll slap that interim tag off him and offer him the head coaching position with the Raiders?
Yeah, Q, I've been back and forth on this one. And it all depends on Mark Davis, who's there. They got to find the general manager as well because they got rid of Ziegler, as I said earlier. Um, I tend to think Antonio Pierce, he's a stable guy and all that. And it's going to have to be somebody that's close to Mark Davis. So, um, but Mark Davis is a wild card, and he may want to get the shiny new toy, like a guy like Ben Johnson from the Detroit Lions, the latest guy that's the big
Mm.
name out there. So, Q, I think they'll go in another direction. I actually heard already Antonio Pierce, they're talking about maybe interviewing him for the Tennessee Titans job. So, maybe he'll get an opportunity someplace else, but I still think the Raiders will try to get that big splash. You know how the Davises are, but with Bisaccia before the interim coach that did so well, they didn't hire him.
All right. In our backyard, the big news: AJ Brown's going to be out Monday. We'll get into that game, Eagles and the Bucks, to close it out. But let's kind of run for the gamut, and then we'll squeeze in, obviously, Buffalo with the now postponement against Pittsburgh. I still believe that Buffalo is the better team. But be that as it may, right now, the way it's set, we'll have 4:30 kickoff, Browns versus Texans. Cleveland, now that line's dropped to 2, and then you got the Dolphins and the Chiefs, and now that line has gone up to about 5, and it's going to be pretty nasty conditions. I mean, I thought the Texans are a great story. I think they arrived the year early. It's just amazing what Flacco's doing. Fourth quarterback, no running backs. Stefanski's done a hell of a job. They're a slight road favorite. I always look at young quarterbacks, you know, it's hard to win a playoff game as a rookie. And if this team is down by 10, you might be asking Stroud to do a little too much. I just think the Browns defense is going to carry the day. I think it'll be a low scoring game, but I do like Cleveland on the road here.
Yeah, and Q, I'll agree with you on this one. The thing is, Joe Flacco, when he starts in the wild card round, has never lost. I know a lot of that was built on his time with the Ravens, but as you said, this team's red hot. They played each other in week 16, and it was a great back and forth game. But the Browns won 36-22 in this one, and you saw Joe Flacco throw for 368 yards. Yes, he had 2 interceptions, but he did have 3 touchdowns, and he kept getting the ball to Amari Cooper for 11 catches, 265, and 2 TDs in that game. Cooper has a heel injury, but I think he's going to play in this one. It should be a fun shootout with him and CJ Stroud, the young quarterback who you talked about. The only thing is this Houston team, they've allowed 353 points in terms of their season. So, you're like, oh, okay, that may be a factor. That defense, you
Mm.
can pick them apart. Yeah, they have Stingley Jr. and some other guys there. But I think Flacco's that veteran presence. And it's one of those great stories. I think he continues it. It may be a close win, but I'll go, like 31-28. It may be kind of high scoring.
Uh, Total sitting at 44.5. Then you got Miami and Kansas City. We know about the horrible conditions in Kansas City. Well, they're going to feel right at home. By the way, it's funny because the NFL scrapes the game on TV and then we keep the game on Peacock. Go figure. Anyway, Kansas City, I think, even though for all their flaws, for their weaknesses, for the wide receivers having the dropsies, for the defense getting a little bit exposed, we saw what the Raiders were able to do. They can run the football. They threw against them in their big win a week or so ago. The Dolphins are just kind of, they had that great start, and then Tua was the MVP, and McDaniel was the head coach, and here we go. Everyone was healthy. They were putting up a substantial amount of points, but I look for these teams that come playoff time, and you mentioned it last week, they're going in with a little bit of momentum. They're going in with some confidence. And right now, this team has dropped 2 straight to Baltimore and to Buffalo. And mind you, they gave up 56 points against Baltimore, and they had an opportunity to win the division, host this game against Buffalo, and they lost it. And I just think if I had my pick, Mahomes, Kelsey, Reed at home over a young Dolphins team on the road. I don't know if Kansas City is going to cover, but I think if you can force Miami to play catch up, and if you can just control the tempo, control the clock, and run the football, and I believe Kansas City is going to be able to do that. I just don't know how Miami's going to adjust to the elements. I just don't.
When you talk about these conditions, it's going to be about, less than 5 degrees and some wind chill out there. And I immediately look at two things: who can run the ball more
Hmm.
effectively, and then who's going to play quality defense. And Miami, Mostert's a little banged up in this one, and then a Chan, you wonder, he's a rookie. Is he ready for this situation? I know Pacheco is ready to go. You saw him in terms of last season, postseason. He runs the ball so angry. I think they're going to run behind him with Thuney and that big wrestler, that offensive line. And the thing is, this is another rematch. So the last time these two teams played, it was over in Germany, and Kansas City did just enough. If you remember, they won 21-14. They were up 21-0 at the half. Tua has got to step up in this one. As you said, the conditions may not be conducive for it because he does not have that big arm strength. And Waddle, he's a game time decision. And then Tariq Hill's a little banged up with a
Yep.
quad injury as well. And then Q, a big thing is Miami's defense is very beat up. They lost Chubb. Howard's not playing in this game. They lost Van Ginkel and another linebacker. So they're going to have several backups out there. And as you said, you can't bet against Andy Reid and Mahomes this early in the playoffs. Yet, yes, they've had their struggles. Interesting. The Chiefs are only 5-4 at home this season, but
Mhm.
they've won two straight games. And don't forget the calling card, as I said, is their defense. 294 points allowed this season, second in the NFL. Spagnuolo has his group playing real well, so I think they'll get pressure on Tua, maybe see an interception here and there, and you'll see Mahomes and Kelsey and the rest of the guys do their thing.
Yeah, let me see what happens when Kansas City's up 13-3, 13-0 going in the locker room, right? And then Miami's got to throw themselves back in the game. Sunday, Packers and the Cowboys. I think we're kind of past McCarthy, in the Green Bay thing. He's been with the Cowboys long enough. This is a tricky spot, right? It's 7, always a tricky number. Packers, young team. They've got some weapons, love playing well. When you're young, first time, inexperienced, but I think you're a little more loose. To me, anytime the Cowboys play starting tomorrow, whether it's going to be in the wild card game, the divisional round, or the NFC Championship, all eyes are going to be on the head coach and the quarterback, right? And we're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Are they going to be tight? Is McCarthy going to have a blunder? I mean, what the hell? He was throwing late in that game last week. So you're like, what are you doing here? Prescott, who's he going to revert back to? We know they got some weapons. Lamb has been unbelievable. I think you can throw a little bit on Green Bay, but I also think Green Bay is going to be able to pick their spots. The total is high in this one. It's 50.5. I'm always very hesitant where I say, this is Dallas's year, right? Because we've seen this before. With that being said, I do like them to win the game. I think they'll be able to run the football, and I think it's going to open up a lot of play action. And I think they need to put Green Bay away early, meaning if it's again 13-3 and then 13-6 in the third quarter, they should be able to pull away in the second half because they're the better team. But is it going to shock me if it's a fourth quarter game? No, it's not.
Yeah, this is the game. Which quarterback is going to step up? You
Mm,
have young Jordan Love, this is his first season starting. He finished the year very well in terms
yep.
of passing the football down the field, and he has a young group set of receivers. Watson, I'm not sure he's going to play with that hamstring injury, but they're going to lean on Aaron Jones, who's come back from injury, knee injury, and he's running very hard and picking up some valuable yards for them. The only thing is with Green Bay, we've always talked about this season. Q, their defense is kind of all right. They can get a little bit of
Yep.
pressure here and there. I know Jair Alexander is going to play in this game. Want to try to maybe shadow CeeDee Lamb, but CeeDee Lamb is playing at such a high level at this point. Named first team All Pro just the other day, able to get down the field, and I think he led the NFL. Well, he's second in yardage, Tyreek Hill. So explosive receiver. Dallas is going to lean on that passing game to Ferguson and all those other guys. I think Dallas wins this one because they're 8-0 at home. And then Dak Prescott, then the pressure really starts in the divisional round. But I think Dallas is good enough to win this one.
Yeah, good point on that home record. And they were averaging about 35, 40 points at home when they were ripping through teams. Obviously, later in the season, couple close games at home, but they do relatively take care of their opponents. Saturday edition BYP with Q. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance Insider Football, 1029. The game, Broad Street South, kind enough to join us, Rams and the Lions, and all this talk about Stafford. Well, again, how about Jared Goff? I mean, can we start giving a little love to Jared Goff? Lions are laying 3, totals 51.5. I think it's going to sit right at 3. They haven't tasted playoff football in a long time. It's going to be raucous. About all the internal storylines. Rams going into the playoffs hot. Lions at home. Again, this was the year they thought they were going to take that next step. And I just think they need to combat the play calling, the schemes of McVay, because he's going to run that type of offense that Shanahan does in San Francisco. I'm going to get guys split, wheel routes, bubble screens, in motion, RPO. He's going to try to really make it confusing on this Lions defense. And I know the Lions offensively, Laporta, that can be a big loss, but I do like their wide receivers. They can run the football. I think Jared Goff is going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder. I don't need Jared Goff to force the issue just to prove people wrong, but I just feel as though it's an underlining story. Everyone's talking about Stafford. Well, what about the franchise that basically told Jared Goff, we don't want you anymore in the Rams? And he's had success now with the Lions. Slight edge. I think the Lions win this one at home.
And this is one I've been back and forth on. These two teams are very evenly matched. And you do talk about the Stafford Bowl and the golf revenge. Can he get back at the Rams because McVay didn't believe in him? But it's going to be on golf. He's got to take care of the football. Later in his early in the season, he had 3 interception game, then he had a 3 fumble game, and the team kind of fell apart there. Now, the interesting thing is, if Detroit can run the football, they're 7-0 when they rush for 140 yards. I know they're going to try to get Gibbs and Montgomery going in this one. They're 6-2 at home. The only thing is, their defense has allowed 395 points, which is in one of the lower tiers of the NFL in terms of defense. And then you look at what McVay can do in terms of Puka and Cooper Cup. I think they're going to be able to drive the football down the field, have some big plays, explosive plays. I think this is a close game, but I think the Rams win this one. Maybe Aaron Donald forces a fumble that kind of turns its game. But another game I think may be high scoring. This may be the last possession wins, like 31-27.
You almost feel bad for the Lions if that's the outcome, right? Their fan base just so desperately starved to get a playoff win, let alone a home playoff win. Then, as we alluded to, the news that came down about 45 minutes ago, NFL State of New York announced that the Bills and Steelers now pushed back to Monday, January 15th, 4:30 on CBS. So you'll get Romo and you'll get Nance on that one, I would assume, for Wildcard weekend matchups. And if there is a game where I think it's not going to be close, this is a game. I just don't like the Steelers at all. I know they're 10-7. I had them coming out of the AFC North as a playoff team. If you recall, my 3 were Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Cincy. Instead, it's Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Cleveland. But be that as it may, with the Ravens with the top spot in the AFC, I don't like the Steelers offense. I'm not a believer in the quarterback at all. I still think the wide receiver is a dog. And I think the Bills right now, they not only saved McDermott's job, but again, we go back to teams that are starting to kind of, hit their stride, right? Where you're winning a couple games in a row here and there, as opposed to what the Eagles are doing. The Buffalo Bills were 6-6. They've ripped off 5 straight, including wins over Kansas City, Dallas, the Chargers, and then Miami to win the AFC East. I think this is the Josh Allen game. I don't trust the Steelers offense, man. They need to turn over. If they can't get at least 3 turnovers in this game and maybe a special teams play, I don't see how this game is even close. This is a look but don't touch, but I definitely like the Bills at home in this game.
And great story with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They finished 10-7. Mike Tomlin has another winning season. I mean, despite having 3 quarterbacks play and all of them kind of playing at a subpar level. You look at Mason Rudolph in this one. I just don't think he's ready for prime time. Last week, he did a good job in terms of not turning the football over and this and that and getting the team into the playoffs. But I think when the spotlight's on him, it's going to be a very difficult situation. You talk about the Bills defense is another one. They've only allowed 311 points this season, 4th in NFL. They're 7-2 at home. And then you've started to see them run the football with Cook and start getting physical with teams. Yes, Josh Allen, a lot of his power quarterback runs. They won 14 straight games in December and January, recently on a 5-game winning streak. Josh Allen, I do believe, like you were saying, he is the key to this game. He leads the NFL with 44 total touchdowns. He's going to put the Superman cape on, and I think the Bills win fairly easy in this one.
By the way, just want to make a point going back to that Kansas City game. There's information coming out from the NFL official NFL account about the game. So they've been in touch with consultants regarding medical staffs for both clubs, medical personnel at the NFL Players Association. Medical staffs will be briefed, players, coaches, because it's going to be really frigid, really nasty. I don't want to see some idiot with no shirt on. You're just asking for trouble. Don't be that idiot. But that's just stupid. You can lose your life. It's just dumb. They're going to have equipment, gear. They'll have additional protection from the cold temperatures. Playing field will be properly covered, heated, and prepared in advance of the game. And the Chiefs are implementing enhanced measures to assist their fans and game day staff, including warming stations, hand warmers, hot beverages, refraining from having halftime entertainment so the fans can leave the bowl to stay warm during halftime, which is smart. So, but again, this is the type of weather that's called playoff weather. All right, we shouldn't be that cold tomorrow night, or I should say Monday night in Tampa Bay. Bucks a 3-point home dog, mind you, against the Philadelphia Eagles, who have just all types of issues. AJ Brown's going to be out. Their secondary's banged up. Their offense is just broken. I know Tampa is a little banged up too with Baker Mayfield, but they have, a very good player in Winfield. They've got good wide receivers as well. I mean, Evans looks to have maybe a potential field day on Monday night. I'm trying to find ways where I believe the Philadelphia Eagles will win the game and just turn that switch back on. And the more we start to creep into this game, and it's only Saturday, I've seen nothing over the last month that makes me feel the Eagles will put together a complete game and win it. Now, with all that being said, they're better than Tampa Bay. If they played their 60-minute game we saw earlier in the season, they should be able, and we saw what they did earlier in the season against Tampa Bay, they should be able to run away 31-13, 31-17. AJ Brown is a major, major loss because you're looking at 10 receptions, $125, and are probably getting in the end zone, right? And you don't have to worry about now double team or over the top help. So that means it's going to rely on Smith, Watkins, Goddard, Swift out of the backfield, and Jalen Hurts has to make plays. He's banged up a little bit with the finger injury as well. So, your guess is as good as mine. Am I shocked if Tuesday we're saying it's 20-17 Bucks? Am I shocked if we're saying it was the Eagles 31-20 on Tuesday? No, I won't be.
Yeah, Q, and I talked about it heavily and previewed this game with our buddy Angel Martinez on Tony Bruno Network yesterday. And, I was back and forth and I made my pick of the Eagles. And that was before, I knew AJ Brown was kind of banged up with that knee injury. And I'll tell you why I picked the Eagles. I'm going to stick with them. I said it on my show they'd win earlier in the week, but when you look at Texas and I was just like, oh man, that's a huge loss for the Eagles. But you alluded to week 3, these two teams played. I know that's a long time ago. The Eagles dominated them 25-11 in Tampa Bay. So they have no fear of going into their stadium. In that game in particular, the Eagles were dominant in terms of they kept the chains moving. They were 10 of 16 on third downs. And then they held the ball for almost 39 minutes in this game, rushing for 201 yards in that game. So they got to lean on Swift. Swift had a huge game last time, 16 rushes for 130 yards. And the defense of the Buccaneers, yes, they have Vita Vea in the middle and those two linebackers, David and White. But the Eagles got to find a way to shorten the game, run the football, and then keep it out of Baker Mayfield's hands. Because as you said, the Eagles defense in terms of crossing patterns, the linebackers and their safeties have had difficulty all season. And we know Reed Blankenship is not playing in this game as well, their safety. So, but when you look at everything, as you said, man for man, roster to roster, the Eagles should win this game. But they're 11-16, playing a 9-18. Baker struggled at times. I think the Eagles win this one. It may be on a Jake Elliott field goal, maybe an ugly win, but they get a W. And all the cries for Sirianni's job maybe kind of back off. But I'll go with a very close game. I'll say they'll win like 20-17 in this one.
Swift ran for over 1,000 yards this season. It helped when he had 175, 130 in back-to-back weeks against Minnesota and Tampa Bay, as you alluded to. He's only carried the ball 20 or more times once. He didn't play in the regular season finale against the Giants, but the last several weeks, 11, 18, 20, 13 touches. He's got to have at least 25 to 28 touches. I mean, it's just, and Jalen Hurts, he's got to understand to live and fight for another down, right? Because he's banged up. It's pretty clear there's something finger-wise, mind-wise, knee-wise, leg-wise, wheels-wise. Even stepping, cutting, he's not the same quarterback that we saw. And the Giants missed him substantial amount of times during the regular season finale. I mean, they had him basically wrapped up. You would almost think the Eagles would have been better off, a scarier matchup would have been against Green Bay than it is in Tampa. Yes, with all that being said, they should win this game. But you've got Todd Bowles, who's a very smart defensive mind, right? And I believe if they look at the game footage, they're going to say, "Hey, we're going to keep blitzing. We're going to roll him out to his left. We're not going to have an edge rusher come off the right side. We're going to blitz from the left. We're going to try to exploit." That area, which is going to be the right guard, the right tackle spot. We're going to try to get to Jalen Hurts and make him you saw it against the Giants when he rolled to his left a little bit. He threw a couple bad picks. We saw it in the Seattle game. We saw it in the other Giant game. We saw it in the Arizona game. So to me, if they put pressure on him and he starts to get frustrated, he will throw that bad pick. It's almost inevitable it's going to happen. And then you got to think too, with the finger and the hand issue, gripping the football, throwing the football, it's on his throwing arm, throwing hand. So I think that is cause for concern. I think the Brown loss is huge. But part of me just thinks Tampa they're just not that good. And I'm trying to state cases for both of them. Mayfield's a gamer. He can run around. He can make plays. Evans is a ball hawk. We know that. He's a big time wide receiver. They've got some weapons. But if they go down, 13-0, I don't think they have the offensive firepower to come back and even try to muster up a comeback. But I've also seen the Eagles let bad teams hang around. Tyrod Taylor had 333 total yards in the regular season finale. Now, granted, Swift didn't play, but the secondary to me is a major cause for concern. And I know you mentioned that if they get the win, the cries for Sirianni's head are going to subside. But what if they go and lose this game? And they lose it with no fight, no heart, no life, like they've shown the last month of the season. Like, I'm sorry, that conversation is going to be awkward, but you have to really consider moving on from Nick Sirianni.
And the Eagles have lost 5 of 6 games. They backed their way to the playoffs. They've lost 2 straight games. We talked about earlier in the week, you want to be hot going into playoffs. And they're the exact opposite at this time. Tampa Bay has made some good adjustments towards the end of their season, winning games. Yes, last week I think they're kind of looking ahead as they won 9-0 over Carolina Panthers, but they're not going to make it easy on the Eagles. As you said, the Eagles have got to get pressure on a quarterback. Hassan Reddick can't be dropping back in coverage. They got to get some heat on Baker Mayfield, have him make some mistakes. So, in terms of Sirianni's job security, if they do lose ugly, I think he's going to have some uncomfortable conversations with Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman. But you would think after 3 straight playoff seasons, a Super Bowl trip, that he would have some goodwill with that front office. But I think in the end, he's going to have to make some changes on his staff. We just saw that with Jacksonville, where they jettisoned a lot of people. So the Eagles need to get some veteran guys to help support Nick Sirianni. And it's, this subplot of what happens next is going to be very interesting to watch after this game.
I just haven't seen them play a complete game of football in almost 8 weeks. 23-21 Tampa. They win it late. They secure the win with a pick. He is Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. Sorry for your family, friends. Host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 1029 The Game, Broad Street South. All right, we got a lot to dissect come Monday or Tuesday on BYP and on Q. We'll hear you on Broad Street South. I guess how we work in the show in this week, if the game's on at 8 o'clock, you'll do Tuesday?
Yeah, I think I'm going to tell Angel I want to do a Tuesday, and we'll do a total deep dive into this game. And we had some Tampa folks on yesterday, so he had me break it down kind of from the Philly side, and he had some Tampa folks. But it's going to be fun because I know a lot of Eagles fans are traveling
Yeah.
down there. We'll see if they're going to be disappointed or not. We know our buddy Angel's big Eagle fan. He's not feeling good, Q. He was basically telling me they're done.
Listen, I'm curious to see what the perspective of Tampa is, but yeah, I mean, I think this team is broken. Even if they win, they're not a Super Bowl contending team. It's you have to have some type of momentum. You can't slide in and then you just can't. I'm sorry. If you look at every team, even if you lose, 2 out of your last 5, at least you won 3, and then you can turn it on a little bit. There's nothing I've seen from this team over the last month that makes me believe that they can go on a deep run. And if they lose on Monday and Sirianni gets outcoached and Jalen Hurts plays poorly, wow.
A lot to talk about.
Yes.
The phone lines can be burning up here in
Yes.
the Philadelphia area.
Absolutely. All right. He, of course, is Lloyd Vance. Give him a follow on X at Lloyd Vance, as I mentioned. Always kind enough to join us on Q and BYP, host of Lloyd Vance Inside of Football 1029 The Game, Broad Street South. All right, my friend, bundle up, get a little hot toddy, enjoy today, tomorrow, and Monday, and then we'll recap everything on Tuesday, pal.
Look forward to it. Thanks for having me on.